Why don't we get this started? We'll call the meeting to order and do roll call.
All right. Tony Roos,
Yep.
Mark Carlton,
Here.
Caspar Coots,
Present.
Roger Kuhlman,
Here.
Neil Klein,
Here.
Greg Stifler,
Here.
Jeff Greider, Leslie Woodruff,
Here.
Jesse Cad,
Here.
Brett Atkins.
Here.
Fantastic. Hopefully everybody knows the general direction to the flag. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I don't know, I'm going to aim myself at like the park down there. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent, thank you. Well, we'll start tonight with public comments. Anybody in the waiting room?
There is a gentleman, just says Daniel. I will allow him to talk and we'll see if he wants to provide comments or just here to listen.
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I wasn't expecting to be up right away. I was mainly here to listen, though I did have kind of two things that I've been thinking of that I wanted to bring up. Because recently I saw that the Safety Commission, if I'm correct, passed reducing residential street speeds to 20 miles per hour. If that's right.
We had a study, or not a study, we had a presentation from the city of Eugene who did pass that.
Oh,
they're
okay.
Contemplating it.
Oh, okay, okay.
2020 campaign.
I see. I totally agree with that and support it. But the one thing that I wanted to bring up that's along a similar vein is no turning on red, because a particularly dangerous kind of transit thing is rights on red. So allowing cars to turn right on red when pedestrians are allowed to cross is I think I don't know, there's some numbers. I don't have exact numbers, but it increases the risk for pedestrians and other active transit modes when they're trying to cross, because a car just at any point can just intersect with their right of way. And there's some places that have banned it and some that are currently looking at it. I think LA is currently considering it, is the most recent one that I'm familiar with. But that's in a similar vein. And I guess then the only other thing, which this one's totally kind of out of left field, but I recently found that something's being tested that in like New York City, and there was one in like, I think Kentucky, a city in Kentucky or something's testing it. Their sound, like the sound limiter tickets or something. I don't know the name. I can find it real quick. But essentially, it is an array of microphones which can triangulate the source of a sound, and it's tuned for the sounds of noisy vehicles. So with noise pollution and everything, cars that have been modified to be louder than the legal limit or comfortable, this can pinpoint them, and then using its array of microphones, and then it can has cameras on it, which will then track the source and take pictures and send it to someone to review and decide if it is an actual problem. And I found yeah, here it is. So the company that makes it is Intelligent Instruments, and they've got like that's the one that's being tested currently. And from what I've seen, it's about the same price or even a little cheaper than like speed cameras for speeding. And so I don't know. I don't know if anyone was aware of it or if this is even the place to bring that up. But yeah, that's all I wanted to mention other than just kind of watch the meeting.
Sounds like you have a background in some engineering or passion for transportation.
Yeah, I don't have a background, but yes, definitely a passion. These are just kind of ones that I feel like are more pertinent to this commission. But I do think there's a lot of ways that Newberg could improve and just become like a better city all around for all modes of transportation.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Daniel from the commission?
No, not a question, but just Daniel, thanks for bringing up that suggestion. That's an interesting piece of.
Oh, I think you cut out a bit.
Yeah, we lost Leslie.
Oh no.
She muted and froze at the same time. It's pretty impressive.
But yeah, thanks for hearing me out. Yeah, I definitely support like the small little steps we can take to just kind of make things better.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item of business is a new chair and vice chair for the 2022 season.
We actually did that. I'm sorry, I didn't get that off the agenda. We already did that, and you and Leslie are doing it again. So.
Oh, I was hoping for a change. Okay. Darn. All right, consent calendar. Everybody read the meeting minutes from January meeting? Any questions, comments, or editorials? I see Casper with the thumbs up. It is a consent agenda, so I think is that just a quick vote? All right.
Move to approve.
I have a motion from Neil, a second.
I'll second.
From Mark. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, Karin. All right, on to the staff reports, and we have 3 of them tonight, so it's a new addition. So, Sergeant Hagan, let's start with you, and thank you for sending over the crash data. That's pretty eye-opening to me.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We got you.
Well, I do recall a lot of different requests from the last meeting, and it took some time. It was pretty eye-opening for me as well to kind of learn the ins and outs of our data harvesting system. So I have sent a lot of data to Karen, and I'm not quite sure what specific questions you might have of me at the moment. I didn't know if you wanted me to go over anything specific. I didn't have any specific topic to go over with you at the moment, other than generally it's mentioned that April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month, and that's a program that we've been tackling this month. The state of Oregon and actually gives us grant money in this month to hire officers on overtime to go out and enforce issues with distracted driving, which is essentially people being on their cell phones. And so last Thursday, a team of about 4 of us went out in commuter hours, spent about 3 hours in the downtown grid, just using some different methods and tactics to try to find people who are using their phones. It's not a hard task. So it's But we're trying to focus mostly on the downtown zone where there's a lot of pedestrians. We're going to probably do another one in some of the construction areas of Dundee later in the month. But that was really our main traffic directed enforcement effort for the entire police department for this month. I don't have any stats available for you yet because it's not over. But I did present some crash data. It's a really long document. I think we had a total of about 288 crashes within the city limits of Newberg, keeping in mind that when we get a crash call to the police department, we respond to both Newberg and Dundee. So we had to whittle this down to the city limits of Newberg for the purposes of this commission. And also keeping in mind, I was trying to prioritize which intersections are perhaps the worst and maybe come up with a list by crash data alone. And what I was finding is when somebody calls the police to report a crash, it often comes out as a street address and it isn't necessarily related to an intersection. So I wasn't able to track intersections as easily as I thought I could. And so you'll see on that list, there's street addresses that are probably attached to an intersection somewhere, but I just ended up sending the whole document to you all so you can get an idea of just generally where the crashes are occurring and maybe find some patterns of your own looking through those lists. I mean, I can just tell you off the top of my head that Portland and Springbrook probably jumps out pretty quickly after you read through that document and everything. On Portland Road, the major intersections along there, that isn't any big surprise because that's the main thoroughfare through our community. But you will see some residential intersections here and there as well. I'll kind of be quiet for a little bit and see if there's any specific questions that I can answer, and I'll be here for the whole meeting if something comes up at the end.
How do you tell which one? In Karin's email to us, she said 288 crashes in 21, 9 involved a bicycle, 66 involved pedestrians. How do we tell that data? How do we parse that data out of here? Maybe that's a question for Karin of what she sent us.
Right. What I would have to do is I would have to go up and I would need to look up each individual case individually and read it essentially to find out if it was an injury or if it was a non-injury crash. Is that the type of information you would want to get out of that?
More of the
or where
75 of the crashes involve bikes or peds, whether they're injury or non-injury. But is there a pattern that's jumping out of the 75 crashes of bikes and peds?
That I haven't identified because I haven't been able to break it down that far. I can work on that for you.
Okay. Those are the numbers that really jumped out at me. That's a quarter of the crashes. Yeah, 26%. I had to get my calculator out and prove that math myself.
Yes, and that could be everything from an injury collision in an intersection to someone is pulling out of a residential driveway and a bicyclist perhaps fails to yield to a car, or the other way around, or somebody is driving by and sees a pedestrian step off of a sidewalk and gets bumped by a car, and that gets called into us as a traffic crash. And you might show up and find that everything's fine and everybody's gone their separate ways, or you might find that there's an injury and somebody's gone to the hospital. So it would take some diving into each individual case to really see what the severity is and their locations.
Any other questions? Roger?
Thank you. When I moved to Newberg probably 10, 12 years ago or so, there was I think like a red light camera at the intersection of Portland Road and Springbrook. And from what, if I remember correctly, because of the bypass, ODOT required the city of Newberg to remove that red light camera. And it was something due to safety, from what if I remember correctly. And I just wondered, what are the statistics, or what are the the reasonings or thought processes around installing or removing those kind of cameras, and are they effective or do they cause problems? And I know in the city of Sherwood, there's a number of them now on Highway 99W, and I guess it's quite a revenue enhancer for the city up there. And just wanted to see comments about how do we can we reduce collisions there, and do red lights cameras, are they effective, and what are some other options? Thanks.
Karen, would you be able to touch on that?
I can touch on some of that. I think people are split on the effectiveness of red light cameras. A lot of it depends on what kind of crashes are happening at those intersections. If they are rear end crashes, then putting the red light camera in doesn't help. In fact, it can increase the number of rear end crashes that can occur. Now, it can be pretty effective in other situations, in other crashes. It's also safer for the police officers who are responding to those types of things, because they're not having to sit in an unsafe location to try and see people who are running those red lights, as the case may be. So it varies depending on the location and what's going on. The challenge that we have in Newberg is all of our signals are on state highways. So we have to get the state to agree to install a red light camera or uninstall it, as the case may be, which is what happened when the construction occurred on the bypass, as you noted. Because of the changes to that intersection, ODOT required that red light camera to come out. And to put it back in, we will have to get approval from the state in order to do that. So there's, like I said, it's really split amongst transportation engineers and folks about whether or not they do good or not good. And in some cases they do, some cases they don't. It just kind of varies.
Yeah, if you note, Sherwoods are both speeding and red light.
Correct. And the way the state law works is that you have to put the red light camera in first, and then you can add speeding on top of that if you so choose, but you cannot put just speeding in without the red light.
Didn't know that. Any other questions for Sergeant Hagan? All right, you're getting off light tonight.
No complaints, but I'll stick around in case there's something comes up.
All right, thank you.
Really quick, sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. I'm wondering if Sergeant Hagan, since they've taken the red light camera out, have you seen an increase in accidents at Springbrook and 99, or is it pretty much maintained the same?
I have to say, I didn't work here at the time that the red light camera was here in Newberg, so I don't have any experience with that. I live in Sherwood, so I can tell you that I see the one in their town going off all the time. Portland and Springbrook is a tricky intersection as far as what Karen mentioned about the safety of police to be out there. There's almost zero spot where you could put a police car safely out there to monitor that intersection. In fact, I've tried a couple spots just to kind of get an idea what the magnitude of the problem during commuter traffic, and then I get inevitably yelled at by somebody because I'm parked in a bike lane or too close to the sidewalk, and so I move on. But there is a problem there. I mean, it does. You can see from the crash reporting that there's some incidents there, and you can sit there for a very short amount of time and see people running red lights. So it would be nice to have some tool to be able to keep people accountable. But whether or not a camera goes in there is far above my pay grade.
Thank you.
And what I will note is we are looking at that to see if we could, what the crashes look like. And as Sergeant Hagan noted, it's tough to parse out some of that data. So we're still trying to dig through that and see what information that we can find from the crash data.
All right, well, moving on, Mr. Rux, thank you for joining us. Hopefully everybody knows the legend of Doug Rux as our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. Roos. There is no legend. It's all a myth. It's all myth. So thanks for having me back. It's been a while since I've been in front of the commission. Karin asked me to kind of walk through what's going on in the community, development related. And of course, there's a lot. I have a one-page list, college ruled, of course, and handwritten notes. So if you bear with me, Crestview Crossing, across from the hospital. If you're driving East Portland Road, you can see houses are under construction. They've started construction on the little under 38,000 square feet of new commercial space, which will be in 5 separate buildings. We're working on a design review for a new hotel, the Fairfield Inn, that's south of Columbia Bank on Brucher Street. So hopefully we'll get that issued out in the next week. That'll be a 79-room Fairfield Inn by Marriott. If you're up on the very north end of town, up off of North Valley Road, Kings Landing, phase 3 and 4, they're under construction and or we're doing plan reviews for new houses up there. River Run, phase 3, so that's on the south side of the bypass. Got to jump all the way from one side of the community to the other. So south of the bypass where the old orchard was at, which if you drive down the bypass now, you'll see the orchard is gone. They've got their public improvement permit. They've bored utilities under the bypass, and so they'll be moving forward. There'll be about 41 new houses that will go in there. So there will be some improvements to Northeast Waterfront Street. Riverlands subdivision, which is down south of the bypass and off of River Street. So there's 18 lots, and that was kind of our first attempt at the skinnier homes, smaller lot sizes, smaller homes. So public improvements are done there. Houses are now under construction. We have a subdivision that's called Eastland. It's off of East 3rd. It's over by 1538 East 3rd Street. And so it's a duplex development. We haven't seen much in the way of duplexes. So that's one we approved a little over a year ago. So their building permits are in, they're getting ready to do that one. We've got a couple of projects at George Fox. We approved a new chapel building. So the old tennis courts are going to go away south of Stouffer Stadium, and they're going to put in a new chapel. And then in that same general area, they're going to put in a new art annex building. So we just got that one in, and it's now going through reviews. We've done a series of pre-applications on development projects, so I'll kind of go through those. Virginia Garcia. So if you've been watching the news, they got a grant. They're looking to do an addition off the north side, and so we're working with them about how they're going to address their parking. Family Pet Clinic down off of Elliott Road is going to do an expansion. The pandemic has seen a rise in homes having more pets, and so requiring more veterinary services. Habitat for Humanity is looking at doing a triplex where Dr. Holvett's old Chehalen Vet Clinic used to be. So just north of the railroad tracks. We have another partition that's being looked at on College Street up at 1400 at 3509 North College Street. There's another partition where they're looking at doing some duplexes and maybe even a cottage cluster on a portion of that. We've had a meeting with North Valley Friends Church, who's looking to do a 9-unit cottage cluster. We did approval for what was called Myrtlewood subdivision up at 2900 North Crater, and that project appears it's not going to work. So now they're pivoting and they're looking at doing a cottage cluster development. We've had a pre-app, did a site visit with them. They're going through some different modifications on their proposal. George Fox has talked to us about their property at the intersection of Villa and Crestview Drive over by the tennis complex, and some possible housing to go in on that. We did another pre-app on a property down off of South Garfield. So this is north of 7th and 8th. There's kind of a dead end street down there. It just kind of goes into gravel and goes nowhere. But there actually is a dedicated right of way back in there. So that developer is looking at doing a triplex and a duplex development on 8 lots. So that's something new. Got a partition down at 421 South Meridian, another one at 601 South Blaine. Kind of the camel in the tent is the Springbrook master plan. So there've been ongoing discussions about potential revisions to that master plan. So those conversations continue. If you've been tracking along, the urban renewal plan proposal went before the city council in its revised form on April 4th, and it's coming back for a second reading of that ordinance on April 18th. So that covers the riverfront area, downtown, and then the connecting roadways of South Blaine Street and South River Street. We're doing some longer range planning, so thinking about future growth in the community. So there's a bill called HB 2003, and we're doing a housing production strategy. So this is a follow-up to our housing needs analysis. Some of you may remember that our housing needs analysis says that we're deficient in residential land, in our medium density and our high density. And so we're trying to address that. And so this will be, how do you produce the actual units? So it's a nationwide issue, definitely a statewide issue. We're not building enough homes. We also got a grant from the state, and we're going to do a code audit for multifamily housing. We have a requirement to have clear and objective standards. So as our housing needs analysis identifies pivoting towards more multifamily development over the next 20 years, we needed to get our code cleaned up and in the right position. Part of the council's housing program is we engage Portland State University students who are doing a bunch of research for us on the feasibility or not of car camping. So it's been floating around out there for several years now. And that will end up going to the city council in a presentation on June 21st. We're also evaluating a program for tiny homes on wheels. So that's been a big topic the last 4 or 5 years. We do not have any regulations right now. So we're doing the research to see what a proposal might look like. Karin led the effort to acquire some additional land for our water treatment plant. So I'm now in the process of getting that property annexed into the city limits. Mill site. So if you've watched over the course of the last year and a half, the mill is, most of the structures are basically down. Paper machine building was down about a week ago. So they're continuing to finish up the demolition. They're working on a lot of the foundations at this point in time. There's some other office building and some other infrastructure that eventually needs to come down as well. But we're coordinating with that property owner on redevelopment opportunities. So we're anticipating to get around 1.2 to 1.5 million square feet of new industrial space east of River Street and over to Winooski and then down to the river. Of course, that traffic transportation aspect will take you out to Highway 219. So been in conversations, of course, with ODOT on phase 2A and the realignment of Winooski Road so that it creates a new 4-way intersection with 219 and Wilsonville Road. A long-standing issue for those who've been in the community for a while, Knapp's Thriftway, constructed in 1988. Unfortunately, the alleys in South Garfield Street were not vacated for that project. So I'm back in cleaning that up, 34-year-old plus problem. And so that's taking some material to council here on the 18th to initiate a process to do those vacations. We've done a lot of vacation rentals, and so the pandemic has kind of pivoted things. So we've seen kind of an uptick in the last year and a half. Most of those vacation rentals are immediately north and south of downtown. So when Sergeant Hagan was talking about the data, vehicle pedestrians, we get more visitors coming and more people walking because they're walking over to the university, they're walking downtown. So we went to city council and had a conversation with them about, do we need or should we be looking at revising our vacation rental standards? And at this point, they've asked us to do some research. And so we're going to go off and do that. We had a pre-app on a new apartment building. So Hayworth and Springbrook, the long awaited, somewhere in the future, we're going to get a traffic signal there. So we continue to see development occurring because we've got the apartment project behind the old Rite Aid. It's going in. So the first phase, those 47 units, and there's 76 units behind that. And then we're looking at another apartment project there at Hayworth and Springbrook. We have an application in for an urban reserve area expansion over on the east side of town. That we have to coordinate with Yamhill County. And there's a separate commission called the Newberg Urban Area Management Commission that actually does the review on that. But before we can do that review, we need to update our intergovernmental agreement with the county and new max bylaws. So we've drafted all that up, and that's out at the county for their review. Urban growth boundary expansion. So I mentioned we're deficient on residential land and medium density and high density. We're also deficient on industrial land by about 156 acres. And some of these developments I've talked about will make us deficient probably here in the next 3 to 5 years in our commercial land as well. So I've got to take some reports to council this summer on our and incorporate into our comprehensive plan elements of our housing needs analysis, our economic opportunities analysis, and our public, semi-public land analysis. And then to finish it off, I can't forget engineering the Bell West booster pump station for water. So we've got that design review application in. That's going on up to the east of the intersection of Bell Road and North College Street. So we're busy because we don't do it ourselves. Engineering comes along with us on all of these journeys. So is our finance department, city manager's office. And eventually we get all this stuff done so that Brian and his team and the rest of the police department can provide services to it all, as well as public works maintenance and operations providing services. So that's kind of what we've got going on in town.
Thanks,
Questions?
Roger, you've been patient with your hand up.
Thank you. One of the things, thank you for the discussion. One of the things that I've noticed, and we'll talk about this a little later, is under the complete streets area, is trying to find ways to calm traffic and relieve traffic congestions and things like that. I've only been on this commission for a couple of years, but one of the problems we get constantly is cars being parked on streets that are becoming hazards for vision, getting in and out and that kind of thing. And I noticed down where George Fox built their new building there by Providence Hospital and things, that there's now doesn't appear to be enough parking was ever required there, and so now there's cars parked all over that area, causing, looks like some potential problems there too. And I just wondered what is on development. Are you looking at these kind of standards and problems that these new developments are causing and not having adequate parking requirements for them? Is there any discussion about that?
Roger, that's a lot like the photo red light. Depends on which camp you're in. So there is one camp that would say you should provide more and more parking. And kind of the school of thought is, if you were in a retail complex, you provide parking for your busiest time of the year, which is between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then the other 11 months of the year, most of your parking lot sits vacant. The other school of thought is that you try to reduce the amount of parking so that you are not paving over your community and creating all this impervious surface area, which creates then another trickle down of water quality for your storm drainage discharge, and that goes into your creeks and into the river. So Newberg does have specific standards by types of use of how many parking spaces you need. We actually, as part of the work we did a couple of years ago with the Yamhill County Transit area, is we now have actually some caps on parking for primarily commercial, but it also applies to industrial development. So we have minimums and now we have maximums on the amount of parking. There are some developments who can come in and do their own separate traffic study and try to determine what their parking demand is. And we've got a requirement in our code that allows a developer to be able to do that. In my 3.5+ decades, there is no right answer on the parking. Some would say, well, build parking garages, and that way you can go vertical with your parking, be more efficient with your land supply. But in rural communities like Newberg, it's not cost effective, you know, at $25,000 to $30,000 a parking space. Development just can't support that. And so what you end up with is surface parking. So there is no easy answer to it. But yes, we do look at parking on every project, from a single family home to a new industrial. We look at the parking.
Just seems to be that a lot of these new developments are causing a lot of traffic issues and things because of not having adequate parking, and people are parking in the streets, blocking exits, making vision problems and things like that. I understand what you're saying about costs and stuff, but again, you're creating some safety issues by not requiring adequate parking.
Well, that's always something. If you know, we have provisions that we have vision clearance triangle standards at street intersections. So that's 50 feet and 50 feet. If you have a driveway that's connecting onto a roadway, we've got a vision clearance triangle of 25 feet up the driveway and 25 feet down the street. All these measurements are at the curb line. You know, if there's an issue that is identified that says, well, maybe we need more of a vision clearance area, that would be something that the commission could talk with your staff about and see if we need to look at that. You know, we have not had a lot of new commercial development actually occur in the last 7 years. Crestview Crossings, the first really, we had the Old Mill Marketplace on Elliott and in East Portland Road. And then we've got the Crestview Crossing. And so the hotel will be the next one. Just prior, before I got here, of course, there was the hospital that went in and Goodwill. And we've seen a little bit of industrial development, but we haven't had that. And those are usually pretty well self-contained down off the south and southeast side of town.
Doug, when was the last time our parking code was updated for residential?
December of 2021.
Okay.
So as part of the middle housing, House Bill 2001, we had to go in and update 53 different sections of the code for duplexes and another 48 sections. Part of that was parking. So the state mandated that for duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and townhomes, we can only require a maximum of 1 parking space. And the state was actually encouraging to provide 0. But the planning commission and the advisory committees that worked on that said, no, we were requiring 1. A developer can put in more, but we by law can only require 1. Multifamily is driven by number of units, number of bedrooms. Then we also factor in guest parking, visitor parking into that calculation.
So I think what Roger was saying between the lines is with the push for higher density housing, houses are closer together and they only have to provide 1 stall per the house, then there's going to be push, you know, how many homes have 1 car nowadays, especially in Newberg, where there's a very underdeveloped public transit system.
We do not have a robust transit system. That is correct. When I was going through the middle housing work for over a year, we did have a lot of public comment about parking. The ad hoc committee and planning commission council acknowledged that particular issue, but also had to share, go talk with your state legislators. They're the one who created the law that says, here's your cap. You can only have a maximum of one. And we spent a lot of time when they were creating the administrative rule, communities around the state did, and said, you can't treat rural communities the same as you do urban communities. So, that might work in a Portland metropolitan area or a Salem metropolitan or Eugene Springfield or a Medford or a Bend, but those regulations don't work for a McMinnville or a Newberg or a Woodburn or a Sandy or a Canby, and the list goes on. But that very large committee that was working on that at the state level, they came down and said maximum of one for middle housing.
Any other questions for Doug?
Can I just jump in really quick, Doug? Thank you. I'm new to this commission. Well, this is my second meeting. Your list was pretty long. Is that average? Is that long? Is that related to the pandemic? Can you explain a little bit about just the number of projects you have going on right now?
It's about average. What we're seeing now that we've adopted the new middle housing regulations. So let me back up. So when we started the middle housing, Newberg was just under 25,000 in population. State law said we had to comply with just the duplex provisions. But we knew we were right on the cusp of being over 25,000. At over 25,000, you needed to deal with triplex, quadplex, townhomes, cottage clusters. So the city council, when we applied for the grant, they said, apply for it to be able to do it all. And so right after we finished the duplex regulations in June of 2021, PSU's numbers came, Portland State University population estimates came out, and then census numbers came out, and we were over 25,000. So we were able to use state grant funds to do the work rather than using local tax dollars to do the work. But since then, we've started to see the uptick in the inquiries about doing those types of projects, which we had not seen for a very long time. Actually, the city's code was negative towards doing duplex and triplex and quadplex. We had no regulations for cottage clusters, and our regulations for townhomes were kind of counterproductive to be able to do that type of development. We have a few of them in town. So now we're seeing more inquiries. Having an inquiry, meeting with someone says they want to do that project doesn't mean that they will. They've got to run the economics of it to see if it's viable or not. We saw a similar pattern when we had to address the accessory dwelling units. So when we did that, the planning commission said, no, we needed to have one off-street parking space if you're going to have an accessory dwelling unit. Then the legislature came back and changed the law and says, no, now you cannot require an off-street parking space for an accessory dwelling unit. So we had to go back and change our code because we put in you had to have one, then we had to go back and change it. But as soon as those ADU provisions got passed by the state and we got those into the code, we saw that first year we saw an uptick in the interest of building ADUs. Now it's leveled off to what we modeled it as. We'll probably get 2 or 3 of those a year. So we'll see what happens with the other middle housing. Will it be kind of the big upsurge because there's pent up demand, and then will it level off? Or when we ran the numbers by the state, they said you could, for your housing needs analysis work, is you could anticipate that 3% of your new housing units would fall into that middle housing category. So when we ran the math, it said we would get somewhere between 57 to 58 middle housing units over the course of the next 20 years. I can say in the pre-apps we've had, it's more than that. But again, I don't know if any of those projects will actually come to fruition or not.
Karin, can you explain when these come in, what happens you know, how does engineering get brought into these?
Well, Doug makes us look at all of them. It's all his fault. No, so we are definitely an integral part of the land use process. And when a development comes in, we will look at it for all of the public infrastructure. So making sure the water, the wastewater, the stormwater, the transportation system is all there and adequate. And if not, then requiring the developer to construct whatever it may be, whether it's, you know, pipe extensions or what we call half street or 3/4 street improvements, which would include sidewalks, bike lanes, if bike lanes are on that street, street lights, those types of things, those types of safety measures. So we would write what's called findings and then conditions. So what's there and then what needs to be there in order to bring it up to meet the city standards. And then Doug's folks in planning incorporate that into that land use decision. And that gets issued with an entire list of conditions of what every developer has to do in order to make their development happen.
But sometimes it goes beyond just their frontage too. You look at it and say how much extra traffic they put in on the roadway, and they may have to upsize a signal somewhere, you know, down the road on their key path, right?
Agreed. So Crestview Crossing, for example, you know, they had to do obviously a bunch of projects or street work within their development. They had to do the signal there at 99 and Providence Drive. But they also had to, due to the impacts that they were going to have at the Providence or at the 99W Springbrook intersection, they also had to pay a fee in lieu of towards the amount that they were going to impact that intersection in the intersection at Crestview or Springbrook and Hayworth in order to move forward with a signal in that location. So yeah, they have to do, they could have to do significantly more offsite also depending on where they are and what's going on.
And I think, Mr. Chair, I forgot probably one of the biggest thing is all of the school projects that we've got going on. So we did a land use decision for play structures at Chehalem Valley and Antonia Crater. We've done a decision on expansion of Catalyst High School. We issued a decision on the new career technical education building at the high school. And we're now working on Edwards Elementary for their expansion. So removing the old cafeteria and building a new cafeteria, some new classrooms at that facility.
Play structures require a land use permit?
Say that again?
Play structures require a land use permit.
Yep, it is a structure. It's something that's built and put together.
Okay. Any questions for Doug? Well, thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
If half that comes true, we're gonna have a huge city.
Well, think of it this way. By the time you get to 2060, if PSU's population projections are correct, is that Newberg would be over 50,000 in size, so twice the size it is today. So we're working diligently. How do you retain that quality of life and that small town feel? That's why we went through the whole community visioning program. So the community could tell us, what do you want your community to look and feel like by 2040? So we didn't go all the way out to 2060, but my crystal ball is not that clear.
Not that big. Fantastic. All right, well, we'll move on to the engineering report.
All right, so I did, as normal, attach the active issues log. There isn't a whole lot on there right now. Let me know if you have any questions on any of that. And then project updates. So Doug noted Crestview Crossing. What I will say is that signal at the hospital should be turned on. Rumor is in the next 2 weeks. What that means though, is that you could get all the way from, 99W and turn to the right and go north through Crestview Drive and end up on Mountain View Drive all the way over to College and get off 99W completely in that scenario. So I think it provides another option, east-west option. I think it's technically east-west option for the citizens of Newberg. So just kind of keep that in mind. Safe routes to school. We are actually opening bids on Thursday for doing that work. And that includes sidewalks on Blaine Street, some crosswalks and sidewalks and ADA ramps on 6th, also down by Edwards Elementary. Elliott Road will be going out to bid the beginning of May is the plan. And construction starting beginning of July is kind of the plan at this point, to be completed in September of 2023. The North Meridian ADA project will be, actually the bids will be opened on that tomorrow. That's one of the ones we got a grant for from the state. So we will be doing ADA ramps on Meridian Street from Hancock north to Fulton, as many as we can with the amount of money that we have available. North College Street, we're still working on that extension of the sidewalk and bike lanes further north. That is still expected to be under construction next summer. The phase 2 bypass, that is expected to be under construction also next summer. Phase 2 bypass is redoing the intersection of the bypass with 219, and it will be a partial interchange in that location at that point. And it will also reroute Winooski to intersect with Wilsonville Road, and probably install a signal there. I did provide you with a link on your agenda down at the bottom. I just added an extra thing for some reference information. You could link to their online open house if you had questions or wanted to look at more what ODOT is doing. But that is expected to be out to bid in November, like I said, with construction next summer. So know that that's going on. Pavement, we are continuing to work on pavement projects throughout the city. Franklin Street is underway. We did get it paved on the east side of College from College to Edwards. That got paved last week. Now we're waiting on dry weather again to pave the rest of Franklin. And then we'll be working on Willamette between 4th and 5th. And then the project that we're going to put out to bid soon is going to be Berkshire from 99W to the intersection, the roundabout at Hayes. And then we're also hoping for Sherman. So that is the plan at this point in time for just general project information. The other thing is CPRD did get a grant. I'm not sure if I've talked to this group about that, to complete a portion of the bypass trail. And so they are actively working on that. And that would be basically from 219 over to the west city limits. No, it's only going down to 14th, right, Doug, for this phase. That is moving forward also. So any questions on projects?
Karen, I'll just comment, I had read in the paper a little while ago, I think, that City Council was reconsidering the Elliott Road project. So I'm glad to hear that it's moving forward. Thanks for that update.
You're very welcome.
All right. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
let's see, looking at the citizen issued log, the most recent one that came in that's on the list is a lack of complaints on College Street near C.S. Lewis. And ODOT said, tough noogies, you're not getting a crosswalk at C.S. Lewis.
Essentially, part of their concern is putting, if they were to put, so one thing to keep in mind is that any intersection within the state is essentially a crosswalk. So just keep that, whether it's marked or not. Legally, it's a crosswalk. So their concern with marking a crosswalk in that location is that there is no sidewalk on the west side or on the east side of College Street. So they would be taking, there isn't a safe haven on both sides of the street to make that crosswalk work. And so that's kind of where they left it until such time as a sidewalk is installed on the east side of College. There probably will not be a marked crosswalk.
And the current ODOT project that's being considered is just to continue the west side sidewalk towards Foothills.
Correct. It will go as far north as Edgewood at this stage in the game.
Oh, wow, it really got pulled back. And then the other complaint is visibility at Villa and Mountain View. Looks like the city worked with PG to get a light.
Correct. I have not been able to get out there to see if that light actually got installed last week like it was planned to. So hopefully I can get out there this week and check that out. Or if anybody's driving around on Mountain View at night at the intersection. So it's the signal or the light was going in on the north side of Mountain View. So again, if you're out there driving around at night, take a look, see if it's up. Trying not to do a whole lot there until such time as Springbrook comes in to start doing an intersection at Villa and Mountain View, which will probably require a signal or some kind of stop controls there, even if it's not a signal. So as part of their project.
Fantastic. Any questions on the issues log or any other comments on that? All right. So that's project updates. Old business 2022 work plan. I don't think we have anything more to talk on that, do we? Or the data requests. I think we saw that. Or the crash has been discussed. And if you dig deep into the notes, there's also a list of citations that were issued over the last year. That was kind of neat. And Sergeant Hagan, when Crestview pulls the leg on that the barricades off the north leg of Crestview and lets people start going towards Mountain View, you might want to park up, get a cruiser up there on that east-west leg between the roundabouts. Might be an educational opportunity for travelers.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be up there.
We have already gotten complaints about people speeding. If they haven't reached out to you yet, Sergeant Hagan, Brett may have already asked to get the radar trailer out there. So.
Now this is because of the new development that's going to open up soon.
Well, the city built the piece between the Springbrook roundabout and the city limit line.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty straight stretch through there with not a whole lot of development, especially on the north side. So people are exceeding the speed limit in that location. So.
Yeah, and then once you have access directly from 99, I think that's going to shave probably at least 4 minutes off my commute if I do this when I do the speed limit, maybe 5 minutes when I don't, coming from North Newberg to get to 99.
And we can let you know when Tony's going to be coming back through. So we can make sure you guys sit out there when he's doing that. So that,
No problem. No problem.
So that's what happens when you get rid of a gravel road and you pave it. Speed does increase.
Much so. And operating vehicle while using a mobile electronic device. That's very specific. Is that someone just reading their pager? All right, moving on. Oh, darn it. Close the wrong file. Where are we? Page 2. And now the rest of the story. In-person meetings.
so that's a question for this group is, do you want to continue to do Zoom? Did you want to go to in-person? What's the pleasure? What I will say is that, again, based on state law, we do have to provide a virtual option, even if we go to in-person, which will mean more staff to man that meeting. But again, it's a pleasure of the commission about what you want to do in that scenario. So asking the question.
So are you saying virtual only is the lesser burden on staff?
Yes. At this point, I can run the meeting, as a single person. Once we get into, if we were doing in person, we would have to have somebody else. We would have to have at least 2 people, just because someone else has to monitor to make sure people aren't trying to log in and provide commentary virtually. So it kind of splits the attention. And Neil has his hand up, Tony, if you can't see that.
Neil.
What are other commissions doing right now? Are they going back to in-person or are they remaining virtual?
Aaron, you want me to answer that since I have most of the others? At this juncture, we are still doing virtual. We're also under discussions about going back to in-person and the hybrid in-person and virtual. We've got the same issue. It requires additional staffing to be able to do that. So they have not made a decision yet.
Okay, thank you.
Any preference? I will tell you, as much as I'm zoomed out or Teams meeting out after living on it all day, for my day job, I do like being able to have this meeting from the comfort of my den. Not that I don't like y'all, but and it's nice to go to Dairy Queen for a snack afterwards as a reward. But I can still do that after this meeting's over. Any other thoughts or inclinations?
I would probably suggest that we, given the COVID situation, it's getting better, but what I'm kind of gathering is that there's no guarantees that 6 months or a year from now, we can still be at where we are now. So I would hate to see us go back to in person to just have to turn around and go right back to virtual again because something changed in the health or a recommendation came down from CDC or something like that. So I would say for the time being, it seems like these meetings are pretty successful. We're getting good turnout. We're getting good participation. Why don't we just keep on? I would suggest we just keep on doing the way we are right now and monitor the situation.
Neil, you basically took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say about the same thing. Our group is able to attend well. We've had, public comment and people come visit. As much as we ever really had visitors or public comments when we had live meetings or in-person meetings. So Antonia, I agree. It's nice to just be home at the end of the day. So, I'm happy to meet in person if a lot of other people feel strongly, but I agree that virtual is the best way to go right now.
Any voices of dissent? do we need a motion for this, Karen, or are we just gonna keep scheduling the meeting as they are?
We'll just keep scheduling the meeting as they are, and I can keep it on the agenda for each meeting, and we can ask, you know, we can ask in July if we want to have October. You know, just keep asking the question. Things could change.
At some point, will they require you to open up City Hall or a room for citizens to show up in person so they don't have to log in and have web access?
I don't know. So far, that's not, I think actually the requirement is the other way around. If you go to in person, you have to still provide a web access, a virtual way for people to participate virtually. And let's be honest, in one sense, this is my own bias from an ADA point of view. This provides people with a lot more access in the sense that they don't have to try to get down to the public safety building with lack of transit and those kinds of things. And I don't know if you noticed, but I did turn on the auto transcriptionist. So you see words across the bottom of your screen. And something that, you know, again, learning through the ADA, providing that option for folks that might be participating in another way.
That threw me off the first time I was presenting. My text showed up below me. New features they added. Okay, well, let's move into new business then. And two topics tonight. One is complete streets and the other is distracted driving. So we'll start with the distracted driving and probably with the messaging from Impact Oregon. Karen, if you want to walk us through what you're thinking.
Right. So again, the group at the last meeting had said that they wanted, that was one of the focuses that you wanted to take on was distracted driving, which, like I said, just kind of played in when I found out that April was distracted driving month. I was like, wow, well, that's one way to kick it off. Impact Oregon, is everybody getting that newsletter themselves? Yes, no?
It's coming to your Newberg email address.
Yes,
Okay. I keep forwarding it on and I'll continue to do that until you guys tell me that you're getting like 15 of them and you don't want that many. So just know that. But I think that, you know, some of the statistics were pretty shocking to me, is that that the roads are even more dangerous today than they have been in years. And on a typical day, 8 people are killed and hundreds more are injured in distracted, affected crashes. And I'm sure Sergeant Hagan can jump in and agree with that wholeheartedly. But again, some of the statistics were pretty shocking. One thing to remember, it's not just on your cell phone. It's when you start talking about distracted driving, it's talking to the kids or eating or drinking. There's a lot of ways. I think one of them was grooming. There's a lot of ways that you can be distracted while you're driving. So just some things to keep in mind. And so there was as part of the Oregon Impact, there was some very specific targeted education pieces. And I know one has actually already gone out on social media via Facebook. So we can continue to push those different pieces out. And again, I know that the police department is also working through this, through their efforts. So the question I would have to you, did you have anything else that you want us to be doing other than pushing some of those things out via social media? Do we want to talk about, you know, any kind of flyers that we want to send out to people? Do we want to, you know, I'm opening it up for this group also about different ways we can get the message out to folks so that Sergeant Hagan has a lot less crashes that he has to respond to.
Is there any messaging added up in the other public buildings that are open to the public, you know, in the city hall and the main main entrance or at the library, when people check out books, there's a message that goes out from the library to drivers, or to the high school for the student driver programs that we can get through Larry.
We can definitely make that happen.
All thoughts just flashed in my head as you were talking.
Yeah, in fact, this one that I sent you, I actually put it in engineering. So, but certainly it's something that we can get out to the other buildings or anything. I don't know if everybody saw this one. This is the, distracted driving claims 8 lives every day, roughly 3,500 per year. That's pretty staggering, numbers when you think about that. And I've noticed, I don't know if everybody else has, just commercials in the last week or so have all been about distracted driving and not texting on your phone and those kinds of things. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but just kind of interesting to think about.
Leslie, anything you want to add to that? I know it was a big topic of yours in January.
Yeah, Karn, I really appreciate you finding the information or sharing the information from the Oregon Impact. And yeah, I've been thinking about this since I was reading the agenda over the weekend and thinking about our group and just a really big picture thought here. Since we meet quarterly, I feel like at our meetings, we have good discussions and a lot of ideas and energy. And then we go another 3 months and, we all get busy and doing different things. I feel like it's hard for our group to maintain momentum on an idea. And I don't have an answer for this. This is just kind of something that I feel, at least, that we all have really good intentions, but we don't quite have a focus on how to really execute those, besides saying, Karn, Brian, we've got a great idea. Can you make it happen? And you guys are always wonderful at making things happen. But, I feel like there should be some other ways that we can be involved with promoting advocacy or this education. But I haven't quite figured out what that is.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is you all have your own personal, I won't say everybody, I'm assuming most people have their own personal, Facebook pages. You could certainly share the information that gets posted up on the city's webpage or Facebook. You can certainly put it, one of the reasons I gave you that information is you could put it up on your own. Or if you do Twitter, you can retweet and all of those kinds of things. So that's something that the group could do just on their own. And again, getting the word out to your own friends and family is a big piece of that puzzle. And maybe we can work with Casper and get it out to the student driver program, however, wherever that is at the high school and that kind of stuff. But that's one way. And, again, we went to quarterly meetings just because we didn't have a whole lot to talk about it at monthly meetings. But maybe there's a smaller group that meets on a monthly basis that, continues to push some things forward. And again, that's a discussion for this group to have. If you wanted to set up like a subcommittee that is going to, push certain things forward through the year. And that group meets more regularly, and I can certainly, set those things up and we can continue to move forward on that. So, but that's kind of up to you guys.
That's an interesting concept, Karen. Who are these messages targeting? Is it targeting the adult commuters, or is it targeting student drivers? Probably both. The adults are probably more guilty than students are. But Casper, how is that messaging received at the high school level?
I would love to entertain the idea of doing some sort of maybe a short announcement thing after second period, which is generally when we do announcements at the high school. A short, maybe 10-15 minute segment where some sort of video is shown. And I mean, this would work well to do in April during the drivers awareness month, to inform the students about distracted driving, because I feel like generally students are really good right after they get their license. They just read the handbook. They don't want to touch their cell phones, but gradually, as I've seen myself have my license for a couple of years and my friends have their licenses for a couple of years, they gradually start becoming overconfident in their vehicles, and having a quick reminder of how a startlingly large percentage of crashes are in the small age group of 15 to 19, I believe, was what was stated in the article that you sent. That would be awesome. And I would love to try to help out figuring out how to get that sent over to the high school, even if we just did announcements in the morning over the intercoms, which I don't think would be as effective. But if we could get some short thing after second period where kids stay in their classes and watch a video or something, I think that could help for at least a short period of time afterwards.
It's a good idea. I know I saw some YouTube videos and those kinds of things, so I can get links to folks if that would be helpful also. Casper, if you could find out who we need to talk to, who I need to get information to, whether it can go through you or if it needs to come through me, let me know, and we can get that information over to the school. That would be great.
All right, I'll work on that. I'll draft an email right now.
Awesome.
I don't get the Newberg, the Newberg graphic. Does anybody else? And Neil and Roger, I saw your hands up. So let's go to Neil, patiently waiting.
Thanks. I was just wondering if Brian could answer this. Looking at all of the convictions for distracted driving, taking aside the, they get in an accident or a fatality or injury or something like that, if you just pulled somebody over for distracted driving, what type of citation is it? Is it usually just a warning, or is it reckless endangerment, or is it like speeding 5 miles over the speed limit?
Are you asking what the specific state?
Yeah, well, if you saw somebody on their cell phone driving through an intersection and you pulled them over for that alone, what would that citation basically be equivalent to?
Well, for a first offense, it's I believe a $265 fine. I think our municipal court has an ability to do a kind of a diversion program that they can pay for on their first offense. However, it gradually increases. Your second offense would be higher. I think the third offense is $1,000, and it actually becomes a C misdemeanor, meaning it's a crime to have 3 cell phone violations. We don't see many of those yet, but or it could just be a warning. It just kind of depends on the officer's discretion at the time of the stop. Usually though, during the targeted enforcement efforts that we do, and especially this month for April's distracted driving months, it's usually usually get a ticket for it, especially in the pedestrian heavy areas downtown and construction zones, just for that impact and awareness component of it. If there's an education, if you can get compliance through education, that's always usually the goal. But everybody knows you're not supposed to be on your cell phone anymore. And when you're driving downtown and there's people trying to cross the street, you should know better at this point.
Thank you.
Mark? You're muted.
Sorry, I just raised my hand that I get the Newberg graphic.
Oh,
That was an answer to your question.
okay. Yeah, have you seen anything this month about distracted driving?
Not that I recall, no.
If that's, Karin, is that something that the social media team at the county, at the city could connect with the graphic and just have, I think I saw something that they're about the enforcement. I don't know, but that might have been through the city of Newberg social medias, not necessarily the graphic.
I know the police Facebook page had posted something. I'm not sure about the city itself.
Roger.
Thank you. Officer Hagan, you mentioned that everybody knows you shouldn't drive with your cell phones. So I'm wondering, how effective are these ad campaigns? Is it really, does it have an effect on people? Or is it, it's another one of those, yeah, that's great, and just gets ignored anyway. They just do what they want to do. One of my questions was, I think you kind of answered it, but when people get pulled over, or there was some recent law changes when people can be pulled over for minor violations. I think you can't pull people over now for a tail light out or headlight out or that kind of thing, but you still can pull somebody over for distracted driving or using their cell phone. That was not one of the ones that they wrote that you couldn't stop somebody for.
That's correct. If the police officer sees you with an electronic device in your hand while you're driving, you can be pulled over for that.
Okay, good, great. So at least they still kept that tool for you. So.
And then the statute actually says operating your vehicle. So even if you're stopped at a red light or a stop sign, you still can't be texting on your phone at that time.
But do you think these ad campaigns have any effect on people?
I couldn't say. I can't say that it hurts. I've seen various types of ads, and they each have their own types of impact. I know I've heard from some of the younger folks, and Casper, you might be able to answer this a little bit. But when you see the ads that really show like a crash or the aftermath of a crash in a wrecked vehicle and what the reality of that looks like, because a lot of young people don't see crashes and how dangerous and scary they are. Sometimes those in-your-face types of ads can be effective, or just some language like, as a city employee, we get our own procedures and policies about using that's the stuff. As from an employer, we have George Fox University, which is in town. So you've got a lot of students who come and go who aren't necessarily even from Oregon. Their laws might be different from whatever state that they're coming from. But I think there's an opportunity for some outreach, maybe through the college. And I like what Casper was talking about, was doing something through the high school and maybe probing a little bit about what types of stuff would work through different age categories, to see what's effective and what's not.
Train a fifth grader to tell his mom or dad not to play with their phone. Take it all the way down to the fifth grade level.
Yes, it's just something I think needs to be normalized. It's a really hard habit to break, to being on your phone when you're driving. I know a lot of the newer phones or even third-party apps, will disable your phone from being able to receive text or calls while it senses it's moving. I don't know if that's something that's becoming more mainstream. But yeah, it's definitely a problem. I mean, these crashes are happening all the time. They happen right in front of me. Somebody just looks down at their phone, usually pretty low speed, but they just rear-end the person in front of them. And fortunately, we haven't had a fatality event in our city limits, but I know that there has been out in the county.
Yeah, and I will note, I just looked it up. So the city itself did do a post on April 6th about distracted driving, and there was a short 2-minute video that was attached. So if anybody wanted to go look at that. I have not had a chance to talk to Ezekiel about the next pieces of the puzzle. So I just thought I'd let you know that.
It's not Lacey anymore.
No, Lacey left the city to go to work for another entity. So Ezekiel is our community engagement specialist at this point.
Awesome. Anything else on distracted driving? Any other ideas how we can get the message out? Part of our function of traffic safety is.
Karin, is it possible to
Traffic
take,
safety.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tony.
Go ahead.
Karin, is it possible to take that poster that you put in here and put that up on traffic safety's webpage? It's probably not going to be a real high hitter, but at least it's not something that people have to dig into the minutes to try to find.
Yep, we can do that. And again, just because April is distracted driving month doesn't mean we can't hit distracted driving all year round. If that's the goal, one of the goals that this commission wants to really, push for the next year, we can do different things, all year round. So we just have to think about what that may be and how we spread that out. But yes, I can get that up on the webpage.
If I could follow on that thought, it's something we've talked about in the past, and I know they've done it in the past, is that accident reconstruction or accident thing, and they usually do it right before prom out at the high school and stuff. Other high schools have done it, and they try to make it as lifelike as possible and everything. But if we did that and tied it in with, it was a distracted driver, that caused the accident or something like that, and you have the fire department, life flight, and police and ambulances and all of that. I've participated in several of them, and usually you have a good fair amount of kids who are teary-eyed and walking away, in a little bit of a state of shock, which is not a bad thing. And then you usually get some family member who comes and talks about how they've lost a loved one in an accident like that, teen related or something like that. And just kind of, especially around prom, it just kind of helps with sending the message. So it's something we've talked about, but we just I don't think we ever really got the rubber to hit the road on.
Neil, did you read that impact email that came out that Karin forwarded to us?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay, there was a story in there about a young lady that was killed by she was distracted driving, and they took her car and put it in a trailer. I don't remember what state that was from.
Like I said, I've participated in ones here in Newberg, and I participated in ones in Lake Oswego when I was still working. And there was always stuff like that. Bring a car, have a parent or a sibling talk. One of the guys I used to work with, his brother was killed by a drunk driver, and he became a volunteer that was part of this group that would go to drunk driving, people who were convicted of drunk driving and they had to do community service or something. And he'd be one of the people who would talk about his brother and how his brother was killed and stuff. And he did that for a lot of years. And he talked about the impact it made and people who came up and talked to him afterwards, and how not only his speech, but other people's speech really made them want to change their lives for the better. So it's kind of a dramatic thing, but sometimes that's what it takes to get the message across.
All right. Well, I would say the challenge for us over the next 3 months before our next meeting, read through the impact statement, the impact emails we've all gotten, and brainstorm a little bit more with yourself of how, and your friends and families, how do we get the message out for distracted driving? And it starts with us putting our own phones down. Casper.
Hi, I'd just like to say I like a lot of Neil's ideas, and I think a few of them could be quite possibly implemented at the school pretty easily. I'm not sure how effective just a couple of the posters would be at the high school, but that certainly couldn't hurt, and I don't think would be too difficult to put up. And then the idea of a public speaker, I vividly remember one specific public speaker we had a few years back at an in-person assembly, which I believe we're now back to for the most part at the high school, that had a pretty dramatic effect on the student body as a whole. And if we had a public speaker come in and talk about distracted driving, I think that could be pretty amazing. But that would probably be more of a question for the principal at the high school than for this commission.
I think we got the right people here to talk to the principal though, right, Karin? Or Sergeant Hagan, maybe, I don't know. Or both.
Yeah, I'd be happy to add that to the list here of, I'll talk to Officer Moreland, he's the school resource officer, and see what his thoughts are about putting, at least starting that conversation over at the school.
Excellent. Okay. Well, the last thing we have on our list is a presentation on complete streets. And we're at 8:30 now. Karin, what do you think?
I can run through pretty quick.
Okay.
The presentation, I think I've got it down to like 7 slides or something, and I can do that pretty quick. And then again, we can think about where you guys want to go from here with it. And so part of it is I'll give you some background information, and then you can we can go from there.
I'm glad Doug's still here because I want to hear about the zone changes that have to happen to implement complete streets.
Okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm running actually 2 different pieces of equipment. I've got a laptop that's got, you know, the PowerPoint on it, and then I'm on my iPad. So, you know. Come on.
It's alive.
Okay. Oh, there it goes. All right. So, and I gave you a bunch of information that I'm not going to go through that people have seen at other times. There was like an 80-page PowerPoint that was presented to this commission several years ago. I was not going to re-present that. So complete streets are streets that are designed and operated, and get rid of that. There we go. Maybe that helps. There we go. To support mobility for all users. So this includes people of all ages, abilities, regardless of whether they're traveling as drivers, pedestrians, bicycles, or public transportation riders. You know, this is a lot of words, but, you know, basically the idea is that, again, providing for all types of users, pedestrians, bicyclists, again, ADA requires some of it, some traffic calming measures to lower speeds of automobiles, and then public transit accommodations, which we don't have any control over at the city, as that's monitored by the county, but that's all a part of the complete streets process. So proponents of complete streets believe that they improve safety, they lower transportation costs, they provide alternatives, they encourage health through walking and biking, they stimulate local economies, create a sense of place, which is a big issue, improve social interaction, and generally improve adjacent property values. As you can see in some of those pictures, there's actual issues in both of these about how these streets are not available to all users. And, you know, that's pretty scary in a lot of ways. So opponents of complete streets, and there are some out there, believe that automobile only infrastructure is a better use of public funds. And they want to consider efforts to encourage other forms of transportation. They consider efforts to encourage other forms of transportation to be coercive. And then individual projects and policies have sometimes faced specific local opposition, typically based on concerns over traffic flow and automobile access. Again, I know this group has talked about Elliott Road being one good example locally. So history-wise, so Oregon actually enacted the first complete streets like policy in 1971. And that required, and this, the graphic on the right-hand side of the screen, I actually provided that separately to you also. It's 11 by 17. But it requires that new or rebuilt roads accommodate bicycles and pedestrians. And it also requires state and local governments to fund those facilities in a public right-of-way. So this law applies to all transportation projects in the state, regardless of who owns the facility, the project funding source, or the amount. So Oregon was cutting edge back in 1971. So in 2011, the Traffic Safety Commission heard a presentation on complete streets. I was not able to find any documentation that a decision was made by the commission or that any policy recommendation was presented to the city council. Again, I did provide you with this presentation in the packet. So since then, the city has adopted several different plans that advance that complete streets concepts. They include the 2007 ADA biped plan, 2016 transportation system plan, which incorporated the biped plan and incorporated traffic calming. The downtown plan, which provided for a road diet for First Street and Hancock, wider sidewalks, festival streets, which again does that sense of placemaking. A Newberg vision was another big one that really looked at improving multimodal transportation. That was one of the big goals, increasing livability. And then current council goals, which include customer service, DEI, and sustainability, all kind of lead into that complete streets concepts. So these are just typical cross sections out of the city's TSP, which, as you can see, show for all types of streets, bicycle and pedestrian facilities. It also provides for landscaping with the planter strips and those types of things, which all help with the complete streets concept. So today, as street capital projects are designed, we follow the TSP cross sections, which includes bicycle facilities, pedestrian facilities, again, planter strips, those types of things. With all new development, the developer is required to construct the TSP cross sections, street lighting, and other safety measures. The city did implement the sidewalk grant and loan program. The idea being to help property owners either fix the sidewalks in front of their homes, or if they don't have them, to install them. We've started constructing sidewalks and ADA ramps as capital projects. And we reactively address sidewalk hazards and gaps when there is a complaint. We have not yet moved forward on proactively addressing those, but that could be something that we decide to do as a city. So some options for the Traffic Safety Commission. I've listed some here. There could be more. So this is just a list of possible ones. So adopt a more robust implementation policy for complete streets. Evaluate the existing cross sections. Is there a different design that might work better for the city of Newberg? Have the commission make official recommendations to the council on prioritization of projects and possibly design considerations. And then again, education campaign on the benefits and requirements of complete streets. A lot of the information, as I noted, already exists, but it's come up with a way to disseminate to the rest of the city. And so again, I'll leave it as questions, discussion for the group. And again, I did give you a list of reference materials and links to get to those materials that kind of lay out what's out there, what do we have, what do we don't have, those types of things.
Questions for Karin on complete streets? Neil, first one at the hand.
So thanks, Karn. A little bit of history, and Leslie, I think she deserves a lot of credit because I think it was her and Mary Newell that went to something and came back to traffic safety with all this information and everything back in the day. Reading through all of the packet and all the information, kind of the one resounding thing and kind of helped us back then was that during that time, we tried to make a joint effort to kind of commingle with Planning Commission. And we had one joint meeting with them and we talked about complete streets. And was it you and I that went to City Council and did a presentation to City Council about complete streets also to inform them?
I think so.
Yeah. So, and then one of the things I did when I was chair was when they were rewriting the transportation safety or system plan update, I met with the chairman of the Planning Commission at that time and asked that Carl Berkey, who was a member of our Traffic Safety Commission, but he was also a past engineer, to be able to be on that committee also. And he, as I understand, brought a lot of that information to that committee or to the Planning Commission to be put in the transportation system update. So I think what I see is that in order for this to move forward, it's kind of got to be not just the Traffic Safety Commission. It needs to be Traffic Safety Commission working with Planning Commission, working with City Council, working with Planning Department, Ops, the county, everybody, because we have unique situations where we have roads that are, you know, you're driving down and 1 second you're in the city and 10 feet later you're in the county. And if we want those streets to have complete street type of characteristics, everybody needs to be talking to everybody. It just can't be us talking to ourselves, trying to move stuff along. I think that's why they call them arterials. You know, we're kind of like the blood going through our arterials, and we need to be everywhere and have involvement. So I don't know if it's a good idea if you wanted in the form of a motion, Tony, but maybe the first place to start would be where we were several years ago with starting talks with Planning Commission and maybe forming a joint subcommittee of Traffic Safety Commission members and Planning Commission members to meet as a subcommittee, trying to bring all the ideas together of the two commissions and coming up with a plan. Because this is not going to be we do this for a year or two and it's done. This is going to be for the rest of Newberg type situation.
I agree. Karin, when is the TSP due for renewal? I think the next grant cycle is next year. I think it just closed for this year. So I think we'd be on the 25 step.
So the last major update was 2016. Generally we go 10 years out, but it takes at least a year to get through the process. So my guess is we would start in 2024, 25, somewhere around in that time frame to work through that.
To Neil's point, if we started now with floating ideas and building a wish list, if you will, to be considered in that TSP, and we can have that lined up to go with code amendments, it has to have to happen. So we basically have 2 years, because the TSP is the trigger that then all the development code follows behind, right?
Correct.
So we have 8 meetings to get complete streets up and running.
Yeah, but I think we have 8 meetings, but I think like my suggestion, if you would want to, or if we made it into a motion of talking to planning commission and seeing if we can form a joint or a subcommittee of the 2 commissions, a couple members or whatever you decide. And then that committee, that subcommittee could meet more than 8 times. You know, they don't have to be on our schedule or planning commission's schedule. They can meet independently of our schedules on a has needed basis to get through what they think they need to get through stuff. I think it might open it up more. Just a recommendation.
I will reach out to the planning commission chair and see if there's interest on their side. How many of you guys have read through the city's TSP, the transportation system plan online? Karn, put your hand down. It's a great document to look through if you're looking to see where the city has planned the next 20 years of improvements. There's a lot of really great maps in there that show arterials collectors, where they're planned, where upgrades are prioritized. But the other thing in there is a typical section. Karin briefly showed 3 of them, but they call them out for each road type, from a collector, arterial, local, industrial. And when you start thinking through bike ped safety and some of the philosophies of complete streets, where, you know, one of the tenets is a 300-pound bicyclist. Is that person better off next to a 3,000-pound car or a 200-pound pedestrian? And right now, our TSP has all the bicyclists next to the 10.5 car, regardless of whether it's a road to a high school or a major light crowd commuter route. But I encourage you to all read through that. Jesse.
Oh yeah, maybe this has been discussed before and I just haven't heard it, but I guess my question is to Karin and maybe Doug, what significant difference would an adoption of the complete streets approach make to your actual plans going forward? Because I take, for example, the Elliott Street project, which when I looked at the plans for that, looked as if the complete streets philosophy had been embodied in the original plans for that. So it seems like they're already being used. Is there an advantage to taking some kind of additional action? And if so, what exactly is that action that you are looking for?
So what I would say is that although staff is using the complete streets and those types of things, it doesn't always filter out to the community. We obviously we haven't done a really good job of what that looks like. Sometimes the council is not completely on board or understands why we're doing what we're doing. You know, obviously I think this group understands completely why it is, but there are folks that are like, well, you know, I moved into this street, this is the way it was when I moved in, and this is the way I want it to be forever. And that's tough to combat in that scenario. And so again, I think a lot of it goes back to education and making sure people understand why we're doing what we're doing. for safety. It's for allowing people of all mobilities to get around. Again, as I noted earlier, one of my biases is for, in particular, people who have disabilities who can't get in a car and drive anywhere. Can they get downtown? Can they get to the public safety building to a meeting? Can they walk down safely down the street to Fred Meyer? And then, unfortunately, in a lot of situations in the city, the answer to that is no, they can't. And which then means that they are shut out of public life in a lot of ways. And that's not okay. That's my my personal belief, so and in fact, if you want to go down that path, it infringes on their civil rights, right? They have a right to be able to participate in all of the same things that the rest of us participate in, just because we're able-bodied. So something to keep in mind. And again, part of it is conversations. I know we're working on the North Meridian Project ADA, and one of the neighbors is like, well, no, I don't want you to tear this out. I don't want you to get close to my plants and my landscaping. And what do you mean I have to trim up my trees so that you're not encroaching into the sidewalk? And there's not always a acknowledgement, I think, of those other pieces of the puzzle. So whether or not another policy would help, maybe not, but it's just something, ideas to keep in mind and things to think about.
So, Karin, if you don't mind, I'll kind of jump in, respond a bit to Jesse and to Neil and to Tony. So if you look in Newberg, we've got an eclectic mix of cross sections of roadways. Some got planter strip with a 4-foot sidewalk, not ADA accessible. We've got other situations where we've got curbside sidewalks and high volume, high speed roadways. Then we've got more of the typical cross sections we have in our TSP today, where you've got your bike lane, you got your planter strip, and you got your sidewalk. What we don't have, and this is just a brainstorming, is we've never really looked at our transportation corridors for those locations that have higher traffic volumes and higher speeds. And instead of having an on-street bike lane, a planter strip, and a sidewalk, would it be safer for the pedestrians, as Karin was just talking about? What if you had the curb to curb, you didn't have the bike lane in the roadway, but you had the wider sidewalk, which was a multi-use path for pedestrians and bikes, separated by a planter strip, and you got the street trees so they feel safer? Would that be, and it's just a question, would that be more pleasant for community members to use that type of facility than it is, as Tony mentioned, because I'm a cyclist, or was, put on the Lycra, put on your shoes, and away you go on a 100-mile bike ride, and you worry about the traffic, but you're used to it because you do it every day. In 2016, we didn't take that type of approach. The Park District does have its Heritage Trail program, but most of those are all off street. There are a few that are on street. So if you go down 2nd Street or 9th Street, those are Heritage Trail paths where you have more of sharrows on the roadway. And so you've got cars and parked cars, and everybody's trying to use that same curb to curb space. Karin hit on it on the downtown. We have taken in 2016, 2015, 2016, we took a hard look about that road diet, the wider sidewalks, truly kind of creating that 100-acre downtown area to really become a much more walkable environment. You can still do your bikes, you still have cars, but it's more pedestrian oriented than it really is car oriented, even though we have a state highway with a couple that cuts through the middle of it.
So I totally understand what you're saying, Doug. And I guess a thought that just came to my head going through all of this stuff, and I'm not trying to say that we need to go down this path and do it, but I mean, there's the 40 years I've been in this town, I've always heard that the downtown area people don't want to be down there because parking is difficult. Walking across, when it was a lot easier to get across First Street and Hancock when it was 2 lanes of traffic before they put it to 3 lanes each way and stuff. You know, it's, you still got, even though we got the bypass, you still got semis and large commercial vehicles going through that. So with the addition of this new out there by the hospital and that light, if there was a way where we could, and I know ODOT has to be involved in this, I know county has to be involved, and, you know, my brother's sister's third cousin's best friend probably needs to be involved too. But to do something where we try to take the commercial traffic off of downtown. People coming from Hillsborough down 219 can go out Mountain View, out and around, and hit 99W instead of going down College to First Street and out that way and stuff. It would kind of go to what Karn was saying about the people that are having difficulties now getting to areas. There's less commercial traffic and less traffic overhaul because the bypass is being used more, and there's other roundabouts using the Complete Streets program and stuff. It would open up more opportunities. I'm not looking that this is going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. It may be part of your 2060 plan and stuff, that when the population of Newberg is at 50,000, the downtown area is different. I know years ago, you know, when I was on the fire department and there were guys that were the old timers on the fire department, they talked about how the bypass was supposed to be built in like the 40s or 50s. And the downtown area didn't want it because they thought it was it was gonna kill downtown. And then what happened was the traffic killed downtown. And then there was a big push that a lot of the businesses that went out towards Springbrook moved back downtown for a while and they couldn't sustain. So then they went back out towards Springbrook and other places and stuff. And this was before the bypass really got hit. So you know, like I said, it's taking ideas like this and talking to planning commission, talking to the county, talking to the state. You know, if we don't have ideas, we're not going to move forward and stuff. It could be a totally different idea that actually comes to fruition 10 years, 15, 25, 30 years down the road or something, but at least we need to have the discussion. I'll drop the mic now.
That's why I just kind of threw out an idea. You know, it's a brainstorming session. You know, what does the Traffic Safety Commission want to do? Planning Commission meets every month. They've also got an additional task over the course of the next year and a half, dealing with this code audit. And so we've got a consultant, so they've got extra meetings. But Karen and I can talk about, you know, if this is a wish of this commission to have some level of communication with the Planning Commission, we'll go talk with the chair, or I'll talk with the chair and see what she wants to do, and talk with the commission, and everything's open for discussion.
Are you getting a new chair, Doug? Didn't your chair just resign to run for Senate?
Our current Planning Commission chair is running for a representative seat in the legislature.
Another Newberger. That's awesome. All right. Any other thoughts? I think we'll just continue talking about this for next month. Well, I will reach out to the Planning Commission, see if they want to engage with us on this. And then, Leslie, is that a thumbs up or a?
Yes, thumbs up. Yeah, collaboration. Yeah, like Neil said, it's been a long time since this group has had a conversation with the Planning Commission, and certainly both groups have had a lot of turnover. So I think that's going to be a great step if we can make it work.
Having lived and having tried to implement some of the policies of the TSP as an engineer, I know things that I'd like to see change, but I'm going to try to keep that as unbiased as possible. But I think flexibility in that to allow staff and the planning director to make some changes that implement some complete street policies would be a good add. That's my perspective. But Greg, your hand popped up.
Yeah, I think I heard that the current TSP was adopted in 2016. And I was just wondering what the then Traffic Safety Committee's involvement for that was.
So it was Carl Berkey was sitting, so the Planning Commission was acting as the Citizens Involvement Committee for the TSP. And Carl was participating with the Planning Commission, effectively representing the Traffic Safety Commission in developing that TSP. And Jessica was managing the project, and then it started before Karen got here. It was finishing up when I got here. So Jessica was leading a lot of that, and of course we had a consultant who was helping us, but it took several years, and ODOT funded that TSP update as part of the bypass. What Carl brought back to the TSC for information from those CAC meetings, I'm not aware of that. That would be in your minutes in your history.
He gave us, back then, I think we were meeting monthly. He gave us monthly updates.
Okay.
Just of, we met, we discussed this and stuff. We didn't go into great detail. We kind of, like I said, we had some meetings with, or we had at least one joint meeting with Planning Commission, and we were having a lot of discussion back and forth. So there was common ground that was being discussed.
Roger?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Roger.
Thank you. Where would you find a copy of this TSP?
On the city engineering websites, if you go to the Newberg website and search for engineering, it's on documents. I think it's on the right-hand side.
Good, thank you.
I think there's also a button in the middle. It says something like infrastructure master plans or something like that. And you can get to all four of them. The water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation there also. So there's a couple of different ways. I'll warn you now, it's very dry reading. If you really decide to read it.
If you fully want to read it, you have to read volume 1 and volume 2.
There is that.
I would strongly recommend you just look at the pretty pictures. You'll learn a lot from just the pictures will say 1,000 words about what the TSP is trying to implement. Typical sections, and what this one does is it looks at our road network for vehicles, it looks at our sidewalk network for sidewalks, and our bike network, and says where's the bike route, where's the freight routes, where's the airport, and how do all those connect in the zoning of connecting our industrial to our highways and to our communities, to our residential zones. There's also a freight route in there that hasn't been updated since the Springbrook Mountain View connection was made. So our freight route that's identified in there is incorrect. But I don't think that's a traffic safety issue. I think that's just a Scribner.
Yeah. We did update a portion of the freight route when we did the riverfront addendum. So we fixed some stuff on Winooski.
What's also telling is what roads are in the city and what roads aren't, that are county roads that should probably be city roads, but the city doesn't want to take ownership until the county fixes them. Or a developer does, one of the two. Anyways, all right, 9:06 tonight. Any other questions on complete streets?
If anybody comes up with other ideas and they just want to offload that brainstorm to me, go ahead and feel free to email me and I'll gather up whatever information we have and bring it back to the next meeting also. So.
And if you do a web search for complete streets, there are thousands of documents and studies that have been done out there. I think one of the things that's missing from the definition of complete streets is the environmental side. It focuses a lot on bike ped vehicle interaction, but you bring the environment into it, talking about landscaping and stormwater management to truly make it a complete street. But that's the engineer in me wanting to fix the world. All right, well, let's do a quick around the horn to see other issues, ideas, and I'm going to start on the top row of my Brady Bunch board I've got here, and start with Mark.
I'm good.
All right, Neil.
I saw in the minutes from January's meeting that we had given to staff a mission statement thing. Can we just keep that on the agenda for next meeting, please?
Absolutely. Jesse.
Well, good, thanks.
All right, Roger.
Oh, good, thanks. Good meeting.
Excellent. Casper.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
All right, look forward to seeing the school outreach program. Hope we can get that off to, that'd be fantastic. Leslie.
Yeah, I do have a question actually for, I think this would probably be best for Karn. There are a couple spots in the downtown area where there's been some new development, infill development. For example, the multi-use building on the corner of 2nd and Edwards, and also the new apartments over on Winooski just after it, you know, from 4th, and it curves into Winooski, another block or two down. As part of that construction, the street is now marked with a bike lane. However, the rest of the street does not have a marked bike lane. And so it is still effectively parking. And I was just curious if that, how to prevent that from happening in the future, you know, if that could be marked with a sharrow instead, or what are some of the other options, since, you know, it's, yes, of course, it could be a bike lane if there were nobody parked there, or, you know, including the whole rest of the street, but really bicyclists are using the traffic lane.
I think that's probably a conversation that we should have. You know, the problem you have is if you don't stripe it as bike lanes, people assume that it went wider because the developer had to build it, you know, per the TSP. And if you don't stripe a bike lane in there, then people automatically assume that they can park. And then as we know on Villa Road and all these other streets where we've been fighting this battle for a long time, is that to then get parking off the street and stripe those bike lanes in is very challenging. So, you know, I could think that's part of the conversation. One of the options was, do we look at other options? I don't know what they would be, or what, but there's a lot of different things that could happen. 2nd Street actually is a shared roadway. It's not striped with bike lanes in particular, and won't be. It's one of those things that Doug and I arm wrestle about. But so, you know, that is certainly a conversation as we move forward. You know, how do we, if we don't stripe it now, that's fine, but then are we dealing with it? Again, thinking about how many times have we talked about Villa Road and putting the bike lanes on Villa Road as they should be. So, you know, again, maybe there's different options.
Well, and yeah, just as a follow on, you know, that's because I bike to work every day and I go past that building, and, you know, 2nd Street is a driving lane and a parking lane. And then all of a sudden there's a little half block of a bike lane that's striped at least. And yeah, I was just curious, you know, how much discretion there is for you or the planning, probably the planning commission didn't do that one, but you know, how much discretion is there, you know, in context?
Well, Leslie, that's one where I was not successful and it got striped. I was the promoter of the Sharrows.
Thank you, Doug.
From River to Harrison. No, Karen and I talk about those kinds of things and lots of things all the time. And for me, I was just looking forward where we're going with the downtown plan. And if we're trying to do redevelopment and go vertical along 2nd Street and so forth and create something I was trying to look at streets are like a room. And so you've got buildings on one side of the street, you got buildings on the other side of the street. And the room is the space between the two. And so tonight you're talking about complete streets. It's like, what does that all look and feel like, and how does it function? And then it's always relative to speed as well. So, again, Neil throwing out ideas when you're having conversations, over the coming years about this as we go towards updating the TSP. I think there's lots of opportunities for ideas.
Thank you.
And if you're really bored, you can even pull up other cities' TSPs because they're all online. They all start looking the same after a while, though, I'll be honest with you. Greg.
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. Brett.
Nothing to add tonight.
All right. So to staff and Karin, anything to add? Doug, nothing? Sergeant Hagan?
No, thank you.
Fantastic. And our citizen that joined us, Daniel. You've been here all night.
And Tony, actually, there is one other citizen on here. I'm not sure if he would like to speak at all. He came on after public comment.
Okay.
Do you want me to allow him to talk and he can provide any comments that he may have at this stage in the game, or?
Sure, why not? It's very rare that we get two.
Yeah, so it's Luke Widows.
All right. Hi, Luke.
Hello, how are you doing?
Great night. You sat here the whole meeting.
I was just listening and was curious, that was all.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you for listening in.
Of course.
All right. Our next meeting is July 11th. As previously stated, Leslie, you're going to run that meeting.
Yep, it's on my calendar.
Okay. And that's all we have for tonight. So thank you all. With that, we will adjourn the meeting. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, have a good one.
Night.
At all.